Welcome to Standard Chartered Money Insights, a podcast series by Standard Chartered Bank that brings you market views and insights on the go.
Hello and welcome to another episode of InvesTips. Family-owned businesses are a major economic force and generate over 50% of global GDP by some estimates. For these businesses, succession and leadership transition planning is critical as it ensures continuity and strong governance in the subsequent generations. Joining me for today's podcast is my friend and colleague Mike Tan, Global Head of Wealth Planning and Family Advisory at Standard Chartered. Welcome back, Mike.
Well, thank you, Steve. Good to be back with you again. Well, you're right that, entrepreneurs around the world typically would plan for their family businesses to stay in the family. However, about 70% of them still actually don't have a succession plan. That's a big gap, right? So family businesses may face rapidly changing operating environment these days, with evolving global microeconomic trends, changing regulatory environment, and shifts in family dynamics, as well as perception of wealth succession by younger generation family members. All these factors make succession planning essential, yet it's a topic families don't talk about enough. Ultimately, it's really about making sure that the business ends up in the right hands, even as both external environment and family situations change.
Yeah, so I couldn't agree with you more. I guess without a clear succession plan, wealth and leadership can slip away. So a solid plan does more than just keep things running. It protects the legacy, which is obviously so important to many of these families. So maybe let's start and tell us what are the other benefits that a structured succession plan brings to a family-owned business.
Yes, sure. For a start, I think leadership continuity and business preservation are just some of the points that families should bear in mind. There are also several other benefits. A formal succession plan helps to reduce family disputes and avoid uncertainty. When you define future leadership roles, ownership structure, and decision-making hierarchy up front, you eliminate ambiguity and create transparency for everyone that's involved in the family. With a proper plan, obviously your business will have the required liquidity and structure to transition smoothly. Without a plan, a family business may encounter forced asset sales, unexpected taxes, family disputes, loss of management certainty, and even leadership vacuums. The sudden loss of a family business leader could lead to a liquidity crunch, and without proper planning, this could topple the family business. And finally, modern-day family businesses face a set of risks, including cybersecurity threats, reputational risks, cross-jurisdictional liabilities, and complexities of evolving family setups. Without the right succession plan, these risks can get amplified. With a proactive governance and risk management framework, you can manage these risks whilst ensuring long-term sustenance and resilience of your business.
Okay, so I get several owners, I think, they think that succession planning is just documentation. There's obviously a lot more to this than just that, right? So it's a long-term process of building and preparing future leadership. So developing the talent, I guess, within the family as well. So building a succession plan isn't necessarily as simple as it sounds. Could you just walk us through what you think it requires?
Sure. So I think that, you would start off a solid succession plan, right, by coming down to planning the right ownership structure and implementing a compliant, resilient tax strategy, as well as having a clear governance framework. If you are considering the what's and how's of it, then remember to add the following to the checklist when you're thinking about a good succession plan. Firstly, put the right legal and governance structures in place with formal, legally compliant documents. Secondly, identify and groom future successors early with a structured training and mentorship plan to build the required skills and address the capabilities and experience gaps proactively. Thirdly, define clear roles during the transition by establishing a transparent decision-making hierarchy and setting up advisory boards where needed. Fourth, create a primary family council to oversee major decisions, maintain communication and alignment across generations. And finally, balance financial and non-financial priorities to preserve the culture and vision that defines the family business. The other one important element, apart from the above, is communication and engagement of the family members. Even with the right structures and documents, it is important that the succession plan is actually supported by the family, particularly by the successors. It is not easy for the family to speak about succession topics, and hence it is more important to make a deliberate effort to do this in the family.
Yeah, I guess we all assume and hope our family members will work together after we pass, but obviously we see in the press that this doesn't always happen, right? So you talk about a checklist. It really highlights the need for a structured approach, I guess. And it's something I always stress with my clients when we talk about investments. A clear, consistent plan is the foundation to everything that follows. And the same principle applies to business succession planning. So maybe you can walk our listeners through a structure that they can use to approach succession planning more systematically.
Yeah, I guess you can think about this in a few ways, right? But creating a structured succession plan requires a clarity of vision, a robust governance framework, and getting the legal and financial side locked down. It does sound straightforward, doesn't it? However, there are serious nuanced considerations here. This is why bringing a seasoned professional usually makes all the difference. So let's walk through some of the steps. The first step is to define and articulate your family's legacy, vision, and objectives. You don't need to name a successor yet, but the next generation needs to understand what you're building and why. A formal document that spells out ownership structure, strategic direction, and how if professional management fits in is also quite important. Secondly, I think you need to establish a platform for the family to communicate and agree on the family's collective legacy, vision, and objectives. This ensures that any implementation steps put in place will be aligned with the family members. Next, sometimes family council would help, as it includes a representative selection of family members, and they will be the sounding board of the family where you can openly discuss and seek guidance on important issues. Therefore, with that, you can then align a clear governance structures that will include a board of governors, advisory boards, or committees who will also oversee strategic and operational decisions within the family-run business. It is also important for you to use legal and financial structures as your safety nets. For example, there are documents like wills, trusts, shareholders' agreements to formalize transfers and avoid family conflict. If the business is spread across geographies, you will also need to have different strategies depending on the inheritance and tax jurisdictions and laws of these regimes. The point being, start early. Plan when times are good. Define roles clearly, especially when multiple family members are in play. Hand over the leadership gradually with senior oversight to guide the junior members in the family and build a contingency plan for emergencies. A structured timeline means there's no leadership vacuum, fewer fights, and successors who are more prepared to take on their roles in the future.
Okay, thanks, Mike. You mentioned setting up a family council and a governance structure. Could you just help us understand how the two differ and what families should keep in mind when creating them?
Sure. So usually, from where we see, a family council involves family members, but a governance structure may involve independent experts and external experts as well, who provide unbiased and independent advice, and may also act as a check and balance for family members, making sure that the focus of the family's agreed legacy and objectives are upheld and to ensure accountability. A family council can also be set up in different types depending on what aligns with the family business dynamics. For example, some family council are more informal and comes across as just regular catch-ups and check-ins among family members. Some family choose to have a more structured setup with proper leadership and governance structures, defined roles and responsibilities, and have planned meetings and agenda. Some families get so large that many branches may need to elect representatives of each branch to sit in the family council to ensure there's broad-based representation in the council itself.
Okay, that's really helpful, right? So I guess there's one thing that breaks the process, and it's a lack of transparent ongoing communication. So it's really critical to share your succession planning with the family so everyone knows the vision, their roles and expectations, and I guess can also give input into that ahead of time as well. So clear communication can prevent operational chaos and keep the peace. But disagreements will always happen, right? So, and I guess that's where the governance mechanisms, family council, structure meetings, etc., can sort of manage these disagreements and conflict. So, I guess the best laid plans do face real world challenges. Succession planning is definitely one of them. So based on your experience, what are the most common challenges that families run into when passing the torch? And more importantly, how do families actually navigate them?
Interestingly, I think that more families bang on luck than you think, until it runs out, I guess. But one of the most common mistakes I see family make is to assume that there's always family harmony across generations. The reality is family harmony requires family to align their legacy and succession expectations and objectives, and the communication within the family is actually key to achieving this. Even though 60% of them expect a leadership handover in Asia, for example, over the next 5 years, nearly 2/3 of them don't have a formal succession plan or even talk about it. The lack of a formal plan can often lead to rushed decisions, leadership vacuums, family disputes, and operational disruptions, amongst many other issues. And many family owners lack ownership awareness around tax, legal, and governance implications upon leadership transition, and they rely on their heirs to just adapt. There are many examples globally of how a succession event can trigger a failed leadership transfer in a family business, impacting the value, sustainability, and operations of the business itself. In a family business, it is also tough to keep personal and professional relationships separate. Sometimes an unresolved generational family dispute can tailgate into the boardroom with disagreements that play out within the family business. For example, in a family business survey, nearly 16% of succession discussion were derailed owing to family dynamics and people issues. So as you've rightly pointed out, staying transparent and keeping communication going is really the key to ensure that this is a sustained process. Another pattern sometimes we see in our work is that, the founders usually develop deep expertise through their years of hard work and learning from the ups and downs of building the family business themselves from ground up. The children, however, who inherit the business, they never really face the same fire. So unless you're deliberately building their capabilities through structured mentorship and executive training, they really maybe end up underprepared for the jobs in their leadership roles in the family businesses. Often, founders may find that they engage a kind of train on the job approach for the successors without really outlining what are the key objectives and milestones that these successors should achieve in their career within the family business. The owners and founders may also forget that succession has real costs, such as taxes and fees. And so if you don't plan for liquidity, the successors could end up having to sell core assets just to stay afloat if anything happens to their predecessors. And you can easily avoid this by discussing family liquidity within family meetings, structuring transfers through trusts, family offices, or other structures to ensure that there's proper governance, and also use solutions like insurance for cash or liquidity needs. And you can also run scenarios to ensure that you are prepared for any unexpected market shifts or transitions. Businesses that operate across borders may also face additional challenges. For example, cross-border rules may make succession more tricky, where family assets, for example, need to pass from one jurisdiction and one generation to another. So families should plan early, and in some cases, you can also use tax treaties to ensure that there are better tax outcomes for the family. And finally, there's the whole issue of resistance to non-family executives. Sometimes families fear that they will lose control and they will compromise legacy if they involve non-family members. But the reality is external viewpoint can sometimes ensure that the family's business stays relevant. It also, therefore ensures that the family shouldn't be shutting their door to outside talent, right? And they can design governance structures to ensure that there's always family oversight, even if there is external talent in the family business. This will continue to ensure that you leverage the professional skills of these external talent, but nevertheless assures that the family stays within the family business and legacy context.
Thank you so much, Mike. I think, obviously succession planning is critical for business continuity and preserving family legacy. I guess there's no guarantee for success, right? But if you have a deliberate strategy and expert guidance, then succession planning obviously has a much greater chance of being successful, giving generational growth, competitive advantage, and the enduring legacy that I think all business founders want. So it's really important to for both what you want to achieve within your life, but then also afterwards as well. With that, we come to the end of today's episode. Mike and I would like to thank our listeners for joining us today. If you'd like to know more about family business succession and governance, please visit the link in the podcast description. I will speak to you again soon, and until then, please take care.
Thank you for listening to Standard Chartered Money Insights, a podcast series by Standard Chartered Bank. For more details, visit Market Views on the Go on our website or click the link in the description.